and it's all the participants. Weighing in was disabled, yeah? Sorry to bother you.
Press the three dots.
Three dots here.
Then try press that. Yeah, yeah. Let me see.
We have some.
See.
Maybe there's two people in already. You have to join.
Maybe. Oh, it's right here.
Yeah, that's right.
No, I think it's already.
Okay.
Open.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. How do I get rid of that? To get rid of this field, what do I press?
No. There's an arrow
Here?
Yeah, press that and press X.
Thank you. Okay. And let me open up the side campus.
Three dots. Press that.
Cyber campus, yeah. And, looking for sign in. Log in. Okay, and it's 10 o'clock. Hooray! Okay, so let's do the cyber attendance so I don't forget. And use the microphone. And so we are in week 13. Add smart attendance, and your smart attendance number is 450. 450 is your smart attendance number. So we'll go to chat function. Is this chat? No.
Press the three dots.
Oh, okay.
And on the top, that's that.
Chatting. Okay. 450. Okay. Okay, so we go here. Okay, thank you. So, okay, here we are in the 13th week of the semester, and let me open up my files that I have for us here. And we go here, and then we go to lesson plan, and I think I recall that we have a student has signed up for a debate, and if no one else is going to sign up by Friday, then it'll be Min Jung Jong versus me as the con opponent for the question: to South Koreans today and in the future, liberal democratic political participation requires devolution. In other words, moving powers, decision-making, and governing authority away from the national central government to regional governments, to provinces and states, and with real powers. And typically that includes powers to tax. Korea is my understanding of South Korea is that compared to, say, the United States or other federal countries, South Korea is a very centralized state. And I know there's a Gyeonggi province and Cholla province and other provinces, and these people can be elected, but they do not have the ability to impose taxes on people, to raise taxes. That's the indicator, one of the important indicators of devolution. Do these regional authorities, whether you call them states or provinces or whatever you want to call them, do they have the ability, the constitutional power to raise taxes, to decide that we're going to put new taxes on people or companies or corporations in order to raise their own funding? My understanding about South Korea is that these provinces receive funding from the central government. They receive funding from the central government. And that seems to be, therefore, the indicator that this is a very centralized state, a very centralized state. But the European Union is always talking about more democracy, and devolution is a term that the English used quite a bit when they established the Scottish Parliament in the late 1990s, claiming that it is the rebirth of the Parliament that was abolished at the beginning of the 18th century. The term they always use in the British discourse is devolution, devolution. It's used, different forms or terms are used in the rest of Europe but all of it pointing to the direction that the European Union has encouraged the member states of the European Union to devolve or move governing authority as much as possible away from the capital, Sofia or Paris or Rome, to the provinces. And the principle that articulates that expectation is the principle that we covered at the last class, this principle of subsidiarity. Subsidiarity, that the most immediately accessible, applicable, appropriate, lowest level of governing authority should address any issue or problem that citizens of the European Union confront. So if you have a problem with something mundane and very important, utilities like access to electricity or access to water or sewage, that would be typically a low level governing authority responsibility. And these issues should be addressed at the lowest level, and that means the European Union institutions, the European Commission, the European Parliament, the Council of the European Union, should only gain competency if absolutely necessary. We talked about competencies in your chapter, in your paragraphs for this week, or for this week, that will the European Union gain competency in all policy areas? And the standard response of the European Union authorities is only if we have to do it, only if necessary. We're not doing it on purpose. Remember the image we had in the last Friday's class about the minefield? Some of you, I think, mentioned have been in the Korean military. And so you've probably been to the demilitarized zone. And the demilitarized zone, it's the biggest area in the world, I think, where there's still active use of landmines. So when personnel, soldiers or trucks or tanks cross a territory that might blow up. So we used that image last Friday about how nationalism is part of the minefield that these European leaders confront in terms of trying to be careful not to threaten people's suspicion or arouse people's suspicion that the European Union is somehow a threat to their German identity or their French identity, that they're trying to create a United States of Europe like exists in the United States of America. We have 50 states in the United States, and people's state identities are fairly weak compared to their national identities. But the subsidiary principle is aimed partly to not provoke this suspicion that not everybody, but many people have regarding the ultimate aims and objectives of the European Union and its leaders to create a United States of Europe that will be a superpower for Europe on the world stage. And that might be nice if you're one of the elite of Germany or France or Sweden or Bulgaria. You know, we're a small country in the world compared to China and compared to even Japan and United States. But as the leader of Bulgaria or Cyprus or Germany, if we create a United States of Europe, we not only lead Germany, but we lead a superpower. And we, the elite of the European Union, some of us might like wanting to be global leaders on the global stage, equal with China and United States. And people like Nigel Farage, leading the United Kingdom Independence Party, favoring Brexit, repeated that claim repeatedly in the European Parliament that this is an elite-driven project, this European Union, because the leaders of the European Union have the ambition to be great leaders and activists on the world stage at the expense of the well-being of your typical German, your typical British person who wants to have a decent life and does not want to create a United States of Europe if that means that anybody from the rest of Europe can move to Great Britain, the way 800,000 Polish people and hundreds of thousands of other people have moved to Great Britain as a result of the collapse of communism and the expansion and enlargement of the European Union. So this devolution is one way by which to calm people or try to persuade skeptics, Eurosceptics, that the European Union is aiming to create something that is beyond and greater than the states. Some of you mentioned in your paragraphs that the European Union, it doesn't want to replace Germany. It doesn't want to replace Italy. It doesn't want to replace France. It wants to add value to France. It wants to give France more influence in the world. Great France, that you, as a French citizen, feel pride in your history. Charlemagne, Napoleon, and so on. And now, through the European Union, France again is playing a great role in world affairs, which it could not play if there were not a European Union. And so this principle of subsidiarity also applies to regional powers, that we have a problem in Europe of nationalism. We all know this as Europeans. So we want to increase opportunity for democratic liberal participation. Remember your final exam question. Does the European Union increase opportunities for liberal democratic political participation? And remember, we said that in this class that I would argue that that is the meaning of being modern, that with the shift from achievement to ascription as the people's understanding of how much honor and respect I give you. It's not your father, it's not your family, it's not the family or position in society in which you were born, it's what you do. That people want, therefore, once they have this implicit emotional and intellectual realization, they want to participate in making this world. Since this world, they understand, is made by people. And those decisions of people affect me. Maybe in a very deadly way. So I want to participate because I want to shape my own world and shape my own fate and my own opportunities and protect myself from threats. So this devolution is advocated in terms of trying to encourage people to participate and not think of, oh, I have a problem in Bulgaria. Sofia, the capital national government. Should I always have to look to Sofia, capital national government? We have a problem here far away in Kırgızistan. We want you here to fix the environment. We want you in Sofia to address the problems we are having with crime here far away in eastern Bulgaria, far from Sofia, here in Gabrovo or whatever small town. Is that healthy, or should we have people focus on solving their own problems as close to their own communities as possible? And that means if you want to promote that and you want to encourage that, because if people are always thinking about Berlin, Paris, Rome, Sofia, Athens, that it makes nationalism more likely rather than less likely. So stop focusing so much, if you can, on Rome, Paris, Berlin, Sofia, Athens, Warsaw, and focus on your attention on your local community, your local government, your regional government. And who knows better the problems of Chola province than the people living in Chola province? So the people living in Chola province, or let's stay with Europe, the people living in Bavaria, in Germany, is a very different place than the northern Germany, where Hamburg is located, close to the ocean. Hamburg is flat, river delta. Bavaria is all mountains. Agriculture in Bavaria will have its own issues and problems that are different from agricultural problems for farmers in Hamburg, because they're different environments, different geology, different climates, different traditions. Aside from the physical issues, Bavarians are very proud of the fact that they had a very old kingdom, the Kingdom of Bavaria, that existed for 700 years. And that's still reflected, as discussed or briefly mentioned in your chapter, that Bavaria, one of the 16 provinces, Länder, of Germany, has its own separate political party that's the sister party of the Christian Democratic Union. It's called the Christian Social Union in Bavaria. And it has its own tradition as being officially a separate party, reflecting that still existing Bavarian separate identity. It's not strong enough that Bavarians say, like many Catalans, we want to break away from Germany and create an independent Bavaria. They don't do that, but they still have in their heart an awareness that we are Bavarian, and Bavaria is something special. We're proud to be German, but we're also Bavarian. And so just to move ahead to the notes, one of the conclusions of the chapter that you're reading in the notes, which I'll get to here to go through, is that Europeanization of the subnational authorities, the SNAs, subnational authorities, has affected them, has shaped them, but has not fundamentally transformed their role or changed their role in the old member states. So if there is a strong tradition of Bavarian identity, Europeanization is not removing that strong tradition of Bavarian autonomy in government. It's shaping it, it's affecting it, but it's not fundamentally altering it. There is a long tradition of conflict in Spain between the national government in Madrid and the Catalonia region with its regional headquarters in Barcelona. And that existed for since the late 19th century. It's continued into the Spanish Civil War, and it continues today. Europeanization has provided more opportunities for discussion, for activity, but it's not fundamentally changed the relationship between the center and the regional government. Even in the case of Scottish identity, you see how Scotland voted not to leave the European Union. Scotland voted not to leave the United Kingdom in 2014 by 55% in favor of staying to 44% in favor of leaving. If they're correct in this book, Scotland is not going to leave United Kingdom today or tomorrow either. There's that tension between Scotland and England, but it's like Bavaria. It's important, but it's not going to lead to the breakup of the United Kingdom. The significance of regionalization and strengthening subnational authorities is maybe most important or most significant in terms of the impact of Europeanization on the regional authorities in the new countries. the new members that joined in 2004 and 2007. These were former communist Stalinist states. And so when you say communism, you think centralized, right? There's one central government authority, one party dictatorship that rules with a secret police. It might have some formal picture ornamentation about being a federal state with regional powers, but still the regional governments were not really involved in autonomous, independent, significant decision making. Okay, having said that, you know, I'm making statements that I don't want to stereotype the communist system as an evil totalitarian system that was all lies and falsehoods. I remember in 1985, I went to Russia. I went to Moscow and studied at Ohio State exchange program. Ohio State University, my university had an exchange program to go study at the Russian Language Institute in Moscow. And we had in English language, I think it was in English language or Russian language. No, it was Russian language. We had propaganda classes we had to attend. And remember, it was Tovarish Starodubtsev was telling us that in the Soviet Union, with the 16 republics of the Soviet Union, that those republic constitutions were important, that the marriage law in Uzbekistan was not the same as the law for marriage, man and woman marriage, as in Russia, that has a significant impact. And I can understand that it might have been important insofar as when the Soviet Union broke up, they still used the constitutional framework of the Soviet Union to create the borders that exist in the new independent states from the Soviet Union. So even though Stalin and Lenin created those borders between Ukraine and Russia and Belarus and Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, and it was still all controlled by the Communist Party, those borders became significant. But the Soviet Union was different from Germany. Germany is a nation state, not a perfect one, ideal, typical one. Soviet Union was never a nation state. It was a multinational state where only 1/2 of the population in the Soviet Union was Russian. Yugoslavia, the old Yugoslavia, was a multinational state that consisted of 5 republics and 2 autonomous regions. And when it broke up and disintegrated, it disintegrated according to the communist constitutional republic barriers. The borders that were established by the communist constitution of Yugoslavia became the borders of the new independent states, more or less. So, and of course now those states that emerged from the old Yugoslavia, they want to join the European Union. And, but the European Union says there will be no more state border changes. So Yugoslavia broke up, but we don't want any more states to come out of Yugoslavia. No more new states. And, but this tension between the case of Eastern Europe and Western Europe has to do with the fact that the states of Eastern Europe are different from the states of Western Europe in some fundamentally important ways. Not all of them. Poland today is 95% Polish. So creating subnational authorities in Poland is not likely to generate the kind of fear and anxiety that Polish nationalists might have. The way when I was in Bulgaria, Bulgarian nationalists were very concerned about the European Union and the other organizations of Europe, like the Council of Europe, the Human Rights Organization. They were pushing the former communists in Bulgaria, after communism collapsed, to create real, significant regional governing authorities, real powers for the regional authorities, let people govern their affairs at the local level, and they were saying that this was necessary so that people could more effectively participate, so we could more effectively use European Union funding to support agricultural development in those different parts of Bulgaria, and also to provide more direct responses to the needs of those people in Bulgaria, where only, Bulgarians, they don't want to count how many people are in Bulgaria that are not Bulgarian. So they will tell you that no more than 10% of the population of Bulgaria is not Bulgarian. When you include the Gypsies, the Roma, the Bulgarian Turks, the Turks, ethnic Turkish people in Bulgaria, and the people who speak Bulgarian, have Bulgarian names, but they are Muslim. They're called Pomaks. Bulgarians are very sensitive about giving regional power to these areas where these minorities, the Turks in particular, are concentrated. The Bulgarian Turks have been concentrated on the border with Turkey for the most part, but not all. Because they are afraid that if you change the constitution of Bulgaria for new democratic era and give these new regions insignificant autonomy, including electing new officials who will be elected at the local regional level, that you might end up with conflicts that could lead to Bulgaria disintegrating. That newly elected Turkish Bulgarian politicians in Haskovo or Kırgılı area might then encourage and support further efforts to get more and more power and eventually try to break away from Bulgaria and maybe join Turkey on the border. And that was a big concern when I got to Bulgaria in 1994. So, of course, the war in Yugoslavia was going on between the Muslims and the Serbs and the Croats, and the Bulgarians were concerned that if they if they devolved power from Sofia to the regions, as the Council of Europe and the other groups in Europe were demanding, that the result would be that you would encourage the breakup of Bulgaria, right? So here is for Bulgaria, and which joined in 2007. And so you see a small country, and does it give you a religious breakdown? Yeah, they say, so ethnic groups, 85% Bulgarian, that's from 2011, almost 9% Turks, 5% Roma. Where are the Pomaks? They're not listed there. And so I wanted to go to an ethnic map of Bulgaria. So this is what they decided to create. After Bulgaria became a democracy, there was negotiations between the European authorities and the Bulgarians about how they were going to structure their subnational authorities, how they're going to divide up Bulgaria into provinces that would increase the opportunities for people to be more satisfied with government if they had more immediate control or access to government power, by having government power more responsible directly, locally to them. So Bulgaria under communism was divided up into 6 provinces, like something like this, 6 different provinces. And then this system was decided in the 1990s. It says, in the 1980s, it was from 7 to, I think, because Sofia was a separate province. Then 87, 89, 99, the administrative structure consisted of 9 provinces. And then now it's got 26 provinces. And this has been a big topic of negotiation with the European Union, because the European Union has been pushing this, but the Bulgarian citizens are very suspicious about this region, Haskovo and Kırgılı on the border with Turkey. This is Turkey here, right? Very suspicious. This is where the Bulgarian Turks are concentrated, that if you allow these people to elect their own governors, that they might elect nationalists. And so I should tell you, the Council of Europe has always been pressing or pushing the Bulgarians, elect your governors, let these people in each of these provinces elect their governor. And the Bulgarians say no. They refuse to allow the governors of these provinces to be directly elected. And they refuse because of the reasons I told you. They're suspicious, particularly about this region, that these regions might want to break away. What is this, 27? These regions might want to break away and join with Turkey, because this is where the Bulgarian Turkish minority is concentrated. And and something really bad did happen, of course, right before communism ended in the 1980s. The communist government under Todor Zhivkov, as the economy was collapsing, attempted to appeal to the Bulgarian nationalism, because Bulgarian nationalism, romantic notions of what a Bulgarian is and therefore what a Bulgarian isn't, is like how under, for example, Korean nationalists, right? Who is a Korean? Well, it's somebody who speaks Korean and has all the culture of Korean, and they're not Japanese. So a Bulgarian would say, who is a Bulgarian? Well, they're Bulgarian Orthodox Christian religion, they speak Bulgarian, and they're not Turk. Because we were 500 years under the Turkish yoke, the Turkish enslavement. And these people who are Turkish Muslims and Bulgarian Muslims are a legacy of Ottoman imperialism. This is all very ugly and nasty. But when communism was declining, was collapsing, Todor Zhivkov was the ruling dictator for many years in communist Bulgaria. He decided, or his government decided, that they would attempt to reinvigorate Bulgaria by redressing that crime of the Ottoman Turks, by forcing the Bulgarian Turkish minority to change their names, to adopt Slavic names. So Mehmet, it was, it's a Turkish, it's a Muslim name, Mehmet, would become Mikhail, and force them to do that. Send the army, surround the village with soldiers and police, and say, I'm the communist official. I come to you and say, Mehmet, you forgot that you are Bulgarian, because due to the horrible Turkish enslavement, your ancestors hundreds of years ago were forced, well, let's say they're forced. We don't want to say, of course, that they were traitors and decided to become Muslim because they wanted to cooperate and get the benefits of cooperation with the Ottoman Muslim conquerors. They were not Bulgarian Chinopa. No. We'll just pretend that they were forced. And of course, you're Bulgarian, but you have this Muslim religion and this Muslim name, and you must be, in your own heart, you must be torn. Your identity must be ripped because you live in Bulgaria, but you're a Bulgarian Turk. You're a Turk, and you know you're not liked as a Turk because Bulgarians don't like Turks. So guess what? We're going to change your name. You're no longer Mehmet. Your father was no longer Yusuf. He's now Yosef. Your grandfather is no longer Mohammed. He is now, I don't know, pick one for him. And they would change the name of these people's generations all the way back, as far back as they had records. And if you resist, you don't want to resist. And Amnesty International said hundreds of people died resisting. Hundreds, we don't really know. We still don't know fully what happened in this time in the 1980s, over 30 years ago. What was it, 40 years ago? Well, 35 years ago. But we do know that 300,000 Bulgarian Turks left Bulgaria out of a population of 8 million. 300,000 people fled Bulgaria. and went to Turkey and abandoned their homes, their property, their farmland. I went to Kyrgyzstan. I had a student, and she was a great student, and she introduced me to her father, who was a big man in the Bulgarian Turkish party, the Movement for Rights and Freedoms in Kyrgyzstan, a dentist. Great guy, very smart. But I would look around in this beautiful place, and you could see all these abandoned houses, abandoned village houses with their little farms abandoned. Nobody lived there. These people left. Many of them came back. 100,000 came back, but not all of them. And so when the European Union and the Council of Europe, which is a separate organization, right, is claiming we have to protect the rights of minority populations, we have to provide opportunities for education in Turkish. We have to have Turkish television in Bulgaria. We have to have opportunities for Turkish language instruction in Bulgarian schools. Bulgarians, nationalists react very badly to that, right? I remember I was in Blagoevgrad having lunch or dinner at the local restaurant there, and the Bulgarian government finally, in the 1990s, agreed that they would have once a week, was it once a week or once a day, 30 minutes of Bulgarian news in Turkish language on television. So they're going to have news program for 30 minutes in Turkish language. And I'm sitting there eating my delicious Bulgarian grilled bulgogi, grilled meat, and the newscaster comes on and starts reading the news in Turkish and with Bulgarian subtitles. And all of the men in the cafe, because they're all men, they go, "Oh!" This is what the European Union wants, and we're a poor, poverty-stricken country, so we have to at least look like we're trying to obey what they want because we are so desperately poor and we need the money from the European institutions. They also hate gypsies, and now the European Union is trying to encourage language support for gypsy language education, and the Bulgarians don't want to hear this. But the requirement for all of this is that the regional authorities have to become more significant in the lives of people to address the unique challenges and problems that people face in Kyrgyzstan, which is very different from Sofia, right? Sofia, for example, is a very cosmopolitan, beautiful town, and Sofia is very different from Kyrgyzstan, which is considered to be a backward region in Bulgaria that is heavily agriculture. This is also where tobacco industry is concentrated. Bulgaria has a long tradition of growing tobacco for cigarettes, and very hard work, very different from Sofia, right? Very different from Varna and Plovdiv, which Varna and Burgas, which are port cities on the Black Sea that are ancient cities that have long traditions of cosmopolitan life. So that's the context for understanding the tensions regarding the push by the European Union to develop the subnational authorities to become real significant actors. Typically, the argument is that we need to have statistics and data about the economic conditions, specific economic conditions in this part of Bulgaria, this part, which differ from each other if we're going to provide effective common agricultural policy support and structure and cohesion funds for regional development, because this area is very prosperous. This area is very poor. So if you're going to give money to this area, you need to know what's going on in this area. You need to work with people and government officials. If you are the European Union, you need to work with people here who know what is going on here, who are monitoring what is going on here, who are able to report about what is going on in these provinces. You need to have a regional authority to interact with, to work with, if you are the European Union, and European Union in partnership with the national government in Sofia. And Again, this, Bulgaria is a small country. I mean, I told you when I was there, I was amazed by the number of Korean business people I saw there in the 1990s. There are Korean businessmen everywhere. In this little town of Blagoevgrad, number one, my office was right here. Blagoevgrad is right here. See, Blagoevgrad. I would go to the nightclub, to the bar, and there was Korean guys, businessmen there, looking for business opportunities. They were selling the main taxis that were being sold, modeled for cheap cars, new cars for the new taxi services emerging in poor, poverty-stricken, democratic Bulgaria, were Daewoo racers. Daewoo. They were everywhere, these Daewoo cars. So, but of course, what does it say about Blagoevgrad? Yeah, so that's the region. Of course, the towns elect their mayors. Blagoevgrad elects its mayor, and that's the capital of this region. These towns all elect their mayors, so that's the Bulgarian response. Okay, yeah, the governors are directly appointed by the central government, but we allow the mayors to be elected. So we have democracy in the provinces. And let's see, what does it say about the American University in Bulgaria? It's a beautiful place. I've seen pictures of this national parks in the Blagoevgrad region on Korean television once. I went to get my hair cut at the salon here next to the university, and on Saturday afternoon, and there was a Korean team in the Pirin Mountain Park in this area. It's like, wow. Very beautiful country, but it's poor. People don't have money. So, there's the other local university, and this is the American University in Bulgaria. This is where I was at until 2009 before coming here. And so this is the old Communist Party headquarters for the region. The building is the old Communist Party headquarters, so it's very big and impressive. And the reason why the American University in Bulgaria was established here was in part because the regional and town authorities said, please put your university here. We'll give you this building. So they gave the Communist Party headquarters to the university, and then they tried to change the deal later. But it is, the biggest building by far in this town. Yeah, so he just got a book published. He's an Italian guy. He just got a book published. It's going to get might get a philosophy award this year. I'm supposed to have a Zoom conference with these people next month, or academic research Zoom conference from the American University in Bulgaria. And so there's the campus. And there you see how beautiful. There's the Pirin Mountains. No, not the Pirin. This is the Rila Mountains in the background. That's typical. Beautiful place. Beautiful countryside. Let me see. That's one of our Turkish professors. That was one of our Turkish professors. She's still there. Didar Erdinç. She got her PhD at University of Southern California. She teaches economics there. You can see this student. I think I knew her. I think she was from Central Asia Republic. I can't remember her name though. And one of the aspects about that was a bit problematic from my point of view was that there's CIA people all over the place at the university, which, I had an issue with. But Blagoevgrad is named after. This was all built in the 1980s. This was all built by the communist regime in the 1980s. Again, Rila Mountains in the background here. Looks like a big movie set. And as I told you, right, Bulgarians are not like Polish people. Polish nationalists will tend to deny that communism did anything good for Poland. Communism was only bad, even if they like some of the things that communism did for Poland. Bulgarians, they don't respond to that way to the communist period. They look to this, for example, that this poor town, here is the opera hall, here is the utility and central city government, there is the utility and post office, nice fountain, lots of 130 cafes, beautiful place. And this was all built in the 1980s, along with the building where the university is located. And they renovated this church in Blagoevgrad in the 1980s here, Bulgarian Orthodox Church. You don't see it here, but there's a monument to the Russian military army colonel who led the Russian military unit into that city when it was liberated by the Russian military in the 1877-78 war, the Russo-Turkish War. Again, this was built under communism. Russia and Bulgaria together forever, Soviet Union and Bulgaria together forever. So there's a monument rock commemorating the Russian military officer who led the Russian military into this town during the Russo-Turkish War of 1877 to 1878. Again, it looks sort of like a movie set. It was all renovated in the 1980s. Beautiful place. You can see what it looks like in the winter. But I wanted to, this was the town, but I wanted to also highlight how these issues are emerging now in a much bigger economy and trading partner for Korea, and that is Turkey. Turkey, as you know, wants to join the European Union. So the European Union says, okay, according to the Copenhagen criteria, adopted in, I think, what's in 1991 in Copenhagen, Denmark, to join the European Union, you must meet the Copenhagen criteria. You must have a effective capitalist economy. You must be able to implement the acquis communautaire, all of the laws of the European Union. You must institute into your own law, and you must respect human rights. And that typically means you have to have devolution of authority so that people can take more effective lobbying efforts to get their grievances redressed. Remember, we talked about lobbying and redress of grievances is a fundamental principle in liberal democracy, that you have to be able to talk to a government official if you got a problem, and the government official has to talk to you. And that means you want government officials who are among you, who live with you, who can do things for you, instead of far distant Sofia or far distant Warsaw, way far away. And the European Union says the same thing to Turkey. But Turkey is even more complicated in some ways than Bulgaria, because Turkey is much bigger, almost 90 million people now. It wants to join the European Union. So here is the Europa website for the accession states, and they want to devolve power and authority away from the central government to the regions. So here are the candidate countries to join the European Union: the former Yugoslav states of Montenegro and now called North Macedonia, Serbia. Croatia joined in 2013. Albania was not part of Yugoslavia, but it was the most North Korean-like of the of the communist countries of Eastern Europe. So it has a lot of problems to face. And Turkey. Oh, these are potential members: Bosnia and Herzegovina and Kosovo, another two former Yugoslav countries, and Turkey. And Turkey has been in NATO since the 1950s. Turkey has been the major ally of the West against the Soviet Union during the Cold War. It says here in 1987, Turkey applied to join what was the European Economic Community, and in 1999 it was declared eligible to join the European Union. It has had a trade agreement with what is today the European Union, since 1959. It has an association agreement since 1963. Ankara is the capital of Turkey, and a customs union since 1995 with the European Union. They started accession negotiations in 2005, but of course, Turkey occupies the northern third of the member state of Cyprus, the island member state of Cyprus, which the European Union, with Greece already in, declares Turkey must withdraw from Cyprus. It's 40,000 soldiers in northern Cyprus from Cyprus before they will ever agree for Turkey to join the European Union. And it gives you a discussion about how Turkey is very important for the European Union today because it is the main route for refugees from Syria and the Middle East trying to get to the European Union through Turkey, then into Greece. The European Union is providing funding and money for Turkey. And so here you see the negotiation chapters that have been opened. There's, I think, 36 or 35 policy areas, from free movement of capital, company law, intellectual property law, and so on, taxation, statistics. They've opened negotiations in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So not even half of the chapter negotiation chapters. And they've closed only one. In other words, they finished negotiations only science and research. So, should Turkey join the European Union? Will Turkey join the European Union? A main issue for joining the European Union is Turkey's human rights situation. And Turkey's human rights conditions are very difficult inside the country because Turkey is even more, is almost more like, it's almost more like Myanmar than it is like Bulgaria, because maybe 2/3 or 3/4 of the population in Turkey are Turks, but the other third or a quarter are not. They're Kurds, right? So if you look at a map here of Turkey, I wanted to open up a map here of, I thought I had this ready to go. Oh. Just a second. I'm looking for where I put these files. I thought I had them ready to go here. A map of the Middle East. Just a second. I'll find it here. I thought I had that. Hold on. I think I have to just go by name here. If I go by name, I think it'll be easier. Did I put them in the wrong? Oh, no, here it is. Okay, so it's the Kurdish question. So these are the Kurds. We don't really know the full number because these countries, like the Bulgarians about the Turks, Turkey does not want to count accurately the number of Kurds who live here. So the number that is used in the media is that there are 10 to 15 million Kurds here, 3 to 4 million Kurds here in Syria, 3 to 4 million Kurds here in Iraq, and 3 to 4 million Kurds here in Iran. Divided among these 4 different states, well, 5 if you include Armenia, where there are Kurds here. Of course, these maps are deceptive because this means only where there is majority Kurds. There are Kurds here, but there are also Turks living among them, but they're the minority in this area. And you know that there is a war going on in Syria, and one of the major allies of the United States as providing the soldiers fighting the Islamic State and the Syrian government are the Kurdish militias in this area. The People's Protection Groups, I think that's what it's called. Yeah, the People's Protection Units. And they're fighting in Syria, and you can see these borders are artificial. This is where the Kurds are concentrated, and along with all the Kurds up here in Turkey. And of course, the Turkish government is very unhappy that the United States is working closely with the People's Protection Forces because they think that they're all working together, including the Kurdish militant groups in Turkey, the Kurdish Democratic Party. party, the Kurdish main organization fighting. Sorry, that's the Iraqi one. That's the Iraqi, one of the Iraqi Kurdish groups, the PKK. This is the one that the Turkish government insists is a terrorist organization. And they have been fighting on and off with the central government in Ankara, in Turkey. Thousands and thousands of people have died, Kurds and Turks. They're still fighting. They're still struggling with each other because the Turks deny that these people, until recently, that these people even existed. They called, I mean, this is something I have to write a paper on. Even though there was a communist Bulgaria and a pro-Western Turkey that was under military dictatorship, but secular dictatorship during the Cold War, they seem to be learning from each other. Like I told you about what was called the Bulgarian Nevisrozditelin process, the Renaissance regeneration process. They went to the Bulgarian Turks and said, you forgot that you're Bulgarian. And so we're going to regenerate and revive you from your decadence by making you again reclaim your true history as a Bulgarian. So Mehmet, you're now Mikhail, right? Right? And the Turks did the same thing to the Kurds until the 1980s. When I was your age, they called them mountain Turks, that they were Turks who went up into the mountains and forgot that they're Turks. And so we're going to uplift these people by making them into Turks, that they should feel proud of being Turkish, because let's face it, they're so backward, they're so lazy, they're criminals. By assimilating, the way Japanese imperialists talk about Koreans 100 years ago, by assimilating these people into Turkey, we're uplifting them from their decadence and back. I mean, does it get you mad when I say that? About Japanese imperialists talking about Koreans? Yeah, so you know how the Kurds feel. Like, fuck you. Sorry, camera. You get, yeah, you know, I told you, you can't understand politics unless you understand nationalism, unless you understand emotion, identity. And so the European Union says, you know, Turkey, you really have to be nice to these people. You should at least let them go to school in Kurdish. Let them speak. They couldn't until 30 years ago. They were not permitted to speak Kurdish language in school. Like again, under Japan, you were not allowed to speak Korean. You had to take Japanese names. They were doing the same thing to the Kurds when I was your age. And why did they stop? Because the Kurds took up guns and started fighting back. And they're viewed this way everywhere. The place where they're least abused is in Iran. But the Syrian Arabs, the Iraqi Arabs under Saddam Hussein, they all viewed the Kurds as the way Bulgarians view gypsies. Dirty, dumb, primitive clowns who are lucky to be part of Turkey, and they should become Turkish. Stereotyping. So the European Union says, you know, if you're in Turkey, if you want to join the European Union, you're going to have to devolve authority and powers to these regions. You're going to have to let the Kurds have responsibility for education. You're going to at least have to let them speak in Kurdish language. You have to give them language education in Kurdish. You have to, and the Turkish government says no, because they're afraid that they want to break away from Turkey. And that has become more feasible now that northern Iraq is de facto independent from the rest of Iraq, thanks to the United States invasion in 2003. And now Syria has disintegrated. And the Kurdish militia, the People's Protection Forces, protect and guard that part of Syria, and they're working with the Americans there as well. And America has conflicts with Iran. The Kurds of Iran, many want to break away and join a greater Kurdistan. And in the last 20 years, this is becoming more and more believable that we can do this. We're going to suffer, and a lot of people are going to die, but we can do it. I mean, remember when I was your age 40 years ago, talked about the Kurds being the biggest group in the world without their own state. And they're divided up amongst four powerful states: Syria, Iraq, Iran, and Turkey. And Syria and Iraq, in the last 30 years. So Kurdish nationalists think, it'll be hard. It was hard for the Polish people to get their state. It was hard for other groups to get their state. The Vietnamese fought so long to get their state. Keep working with the Americans. The Israelis are aiding the Kurds because the Kurds are fighting the Arabs, because they're minorities in Iraq and Syria, right? So you have the Israelis on their side. And everybody knows what I'm telling you. It's not a secret. So the European Union, however, says we're all about human rights. You can't be torturing Kurdish activists. You cannot be suppressing Kurdish journalists wanting to write in Kurdish. You cannot be denying government money to provide public school in Kurdish language for Kurdish people. You can't do that and join the European Union. The Turks respond, we also don't want our country to break up. And these people are drug runners and terrorists. Because, you know, if you're belonging to an insurgent guerrilla group, you have to raise money. You've got to get money. Who's going to give you money? Israelis might give you some money. The different governments, when they want to punish another government, might give the Kurds in their enemy's state some money and support to give them a headache. But one of the ways the Kurds make money is through crime, through smuggling, drugs, anything. Same with the Taliban in Afghanistan, right? You need money if you want to fight a war. Also, with the Bulgarian nationalists, 200 years ago, they used to smuggle lots of opium from Balkans into Europe. So, and the other one I showed you, this is the Kurdish Democratic Party, one of the two parties in Kurdistan, in northern Iraq. There's another one that PUK, and they're all allying with the United States. This is the more modern pro-Iranian group in northern Iraq. So there was an uprising in Iran among the Kurdish minority there to try to break away from Iran during the early stages of the Iranian Revolution, right? From 89 to 96. This is the Iranian Kurdish movement. So Turkey has been pressing so long to join the European Union. And we look at this map again here. Imagine you're Ursula von der Leyen, and you know what's going on in Syria now, and Iraq, and Iran, and you think, do we really want to bring this country to the European Union? Israel is giving money to the Kurds in Iran to fight the Iranians. For many, many years, the Iraqi government would support the Kurds in Turkey to punish Turkey for being so pro-American, or the Syrians would do the same thing. They would aid each group inside of these countries and their neighbors to punish their neighbors. Here's another map of the area. PUK and KDP have divided up northern Iraq. There's a big American Army base at Arbil. Big American Army base, military base there. I think there were some Koreans stationed there too until recently. Korean military in Arbil. There's also a American-style university set up there in that area. The Americans aren't going anywhere. And so they are de facto allied. And so Turkey knows this. And so that's why Erdogan is so furious. President Erdogan of Turkey is so furious because the Americans are de facto supporting Kurdish nationalists who have a dream of breaking all this away and creating their own independent country for the Kurdish people. The Kurds speak a language closer to English. It's Indo-European language, unlike Arabic, which is Semitic language. Here's a map of the Middle East. These borders were not drawn by these people. Those funky borders I just showed you, these borders were drawn by Europeans between Iraq and Syria at the end of World War I. They were not drawn by the Kurds or the Armenians or the Arabs, because at the beginning of the 20th century, these peoples were all primarily unmobilized. They were not politically aware. Remember the shift from description to achievement? They were still traditional. So they didn't know what the Arab nation or the Kurdish nation or the Iranian nation was. They do now, but they're left with these borders that were drawn by London and Paris and reinforced by the United States today. A very different condition than France faced, for example, as a member of the European Union. So here's an old map of the distribution of Muslims in the world. You can see Muslims here in Bulgaria, all the way across Bosnia, Herzegovina, here in some parts of Serbia, Kosovo, which is now an independent state. These are Sunni Muslims, and these are Shia Muslims. And they don't like each other anywhere. They don't like each other. It's very interesting. In Yemen, there's a Shia movement. Iran is helping them. Iraq has a lot of Shia. There are even some Shia in Bulgaria, I was told. They moved there after a war from the Persian Empire. The military forces that moved somehow ended up in Bulgaria. So there are actually Shia Muslim villages in Bulgaria. All the way into the Philippines. Osama bin Laden was remember we talked about the 4 community bases for nationalism: territory, ethnic community, territorial community, racial community, and sectarian community, religious community. Osama bin Laden wanted to unify all of these Muslims in one big new caliphate in order to liberate them from oppression by the Israelis or the Hindus or the colonial collaborators, secularist collaborators with the old imperial masters in this area. Okay, so and here's the Wikipedia entry for Turkey. Beautiful place, by the way. If you get a chance to travel, you definitely should go to Turkey. And this is the old Ottoman Empire that existed until the 1920s. And in some ways, you can say, that so many of the problems we face today here in the Middle East, or in the Balkans with the wars in Yugoslavia, or conflicts in Libya and elsewhere, we're still dealing with the legacy of the breakup of the Ottoman Empire at the beginning of the 20th century. Kurds in this area. So again, I'm giving you all this historical background to try to show you the significance more fully of the details that you're reading about in the textbook, about all of the details about regionalism and subnational authorities and their impact. And, in Western Europe, it can get exciting when the Catalans get inspired by European integration to believe we can do this. We don't need to stay in Spain to be safe, secure, and prosperous. And we can finally express Catalonia's greatness to the world by being a sovereign state. Think about that. There's only not even 200 states in the world. From little Iceland, 300,000, to big China, 1.4 billion. But little Iceland, they get an ambassador to the United Nations. They have an ambassador to the United States. They have an ambassador to the European Union. when the world comes together at the United Nations to discuss COVID-19 pandemic or global climate change, the ambassador to China speaks, the ambassador to the United States speaks, the ambassador from South Korea speaks, Iceland gets to speak, but the Kurds don't. And if you're a Kurdish identifier, you say, that's not fair. We are no less than anyone else in this world. We must have our own sovereign state. We don't want the Turkish government to speak for us. And the point I'm making, it's really cool if you have your own state. You are acknowledged and recognized by the rest of the world as one of the family of nations into which Homo sapiens is divided. And you don't have to suffer this continual mockery from Arabs and Iranians and Turks that you Kurds are country bumpkins at best. So the Kurds are concentrated around here in this area. And yeah, it was one of the early members of the Council of Europe in 1950. I don't think they have an ethnic map here of the ethnic population breakdown. You know, it's a very sensitive topic. They don't want to have an ethnic, demographics. Yeah, this is where there's a Kurdish minority. Okay, so let's do an exercise. Yay! And where's the exercise here? Which one? This one? Okay. So please respond to the following statement. The predominantly Kurdish areas of eastern Turkey will secede from Turkey, and what remains of Turkey will join the European Union someday. Click here to start this. Okay, so please, do you strongly agree? Agree? Neutral cannot decide? Disagree or strongly disagree? That sooner or later, because I want to tell you, I mean, I won't mention a name, but somebody, a Turkish professor, she even told me once, she just wished this problem would go away. That let the Kurds go and let the rest of Turkey finally join the European Union. She's a very secularized Turk. She doesn't wear the hijab. She's not Muslim in the sense like that. She desperately wants Turkey in the European Union. And she even said, so you don't think, so far I think that's 5 people. Is that everybody? We'll go 1 minute, right? So most of you think they're never going to give up their territory, despite what's going on. Incredibly complicated, violent, dynamic, horrible going on in Syria and Iraq with the Americans and the Israelis and the different players and actors, that we're not going to see the disintegration of Turkey. Turkey's never going to give up its Kurds, its Kurdish areas. Okay, so then do I click this again? Or no, just click up here? Okay, so that's the result. And this one? Thank you. Okay, so you disagree, huh? So Turkey is never going to join the European Union. You think Turkey's never going to join the European Union? You think Turkey will join the European Union? I mean, I have to remember, like I told you, I was a college student. I graduated from college in 1985. The Cold War was just beginning to end. Gorbachev came to power. And there was all of this discussion about European Union, Big Bang expansion, and when would Turkey join? Turkey had been, it was always described when I was in college, Turkey has the second biggest army in NATO after the United States. It's America's anchor. in containment against the Soviet evil empire, the supposed Russian version of Nazi Germany. On the front lines is Turkey with its proud army traditions inherited from Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, and it's fighting, opposing communism, and it's secular. It's not like Iran. It's not an Islamic republic. It's a secular republic established by Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, and it wants to join the European Union. It had, I told you, it reached a customs union agreement with European Union in 1995. 1995, they formed a customs union with the European Union. It's been in NATO since the 50s. Of course it's going to join. And here we are in 2021. Erdogan is criticized for his authoritarianism, his, what did they say? Nobody has as many journalists in jail as Turkey. Because typically they're reporting on human rights violations, including, what's going on with the Kurds. And so, okay, well, then we should get to the notes. So that's the context for understanding these notes. How did we get this mess? The Sykes-Picot Agreement. We covered this last semester briefly. Yeah, okay, so we have a really nice agreement, a nice Wikipedia entries, which I did not have when I was a student, about how this area in the Ottoman Empire was divided up secretly by the British and the French as they are fighting the war, and to establish these boundaries that more or less exist, that you can vaguely see Iraq here. This is the British area of influence. These French area of influence here. This was agreed by the British to go to the Jewish nationalists who want to create a homeland in Palestine. This is the sources of those boundaries that they're fighting over today. It wasn't drawn by the Arabs. It wasn't drawn by the Kurds. This is where the Kurdish people are concentrated, but they were the most backward. They're most primitive, the most unpolitically mobilized. So they're militarily weak. So the Mustafa Kemal Ataturk in the 1920s led the counter-revolution to abolish this partition of Turkey. It wasn't just that part. I like this. I didn't check this out fully last time. There you see Sykes and Picot, the French and British negotiators. Russia, as part of these secret negotiations, was supposed to get Constantinople, the capital of Orthodox Christianity, where Orthodox religion was born in Constantinople. This was supposed to be part of Russia, according to these secret agreements between London and Paris and St. Petersburg and Rome. Rome was supposed to get, Italy was supposed to get this part of Turkey, was supposed to go to Italy. They're going to divide up and eat Turkey like a big piece of bulgogi, divided up and devoured up. They don't show you, I think, on this map how Greece was going to take all of the, see what's here. This area was supposed to, Greece was going to take all of this area here along the coast. There were millions of Greeks living here along the western coast of Turkey. And when Mustafa Kemal Ataturk led the rebellion against the humiliation and collapse of the Ottoman Empire, he drove out the Greeks, he drove out the Italians. Russia, of course, was in the midst of its communist Bolshevik revolution, and he moved the military in to suppress the Kurds, but he couldn't really move against the British and the French. This was part of the French Empire, and this is part of the, what's called mandated by the League of Nations. So we hear about British mandate Palestine. The British also got the Palestine under a mandate under the League of Nations. So you often hear today in the rioting going on today that Israel, the Palestinians control 10% of British mandate Palestine. So all of the territory that the League of Nations after World War I, since the Ottoman Empire was on the side of the Germans and the Austrians during World War I, they occupied this territory because Turkey was their enemy during World War I, and they used the League of Nations to say to approve what they did. So of course Britain and France controlled the League of Nations. The Americans were not in the League of Nations. So Britain asked the League of Nations, like a hand puppet, League of Nations, shall we take control over these enemy territories until we can decide what to do with them? And the League of Nations said, yes, you should. We give you a mandate, Britain. So this became British Mandate Palestine. And so you see that's the point was made a few days ago on Democracy Now! That here we are in 2021, 100 years later, and the Jews, the Zionists, control 90% of British Mandate Palestine. The other 10% is controlled by the Palestinians, and they're divided up into little islands of territory. They can gather their garbage, collect their garbage, and that's about it in terms of self-governing authority. And so we know about these agreements because when the communists came to power in St. Petersburg in Russia, they had copies of all these secret agreements in the foreign ministry of the Russian Empire, and they published them all. The Bolshevik communists published them all. That's how we know about them. The British, this is a nice Wikipedia entry. Look at this. The British promised the great-great-grandfather of the king of Jordan today, Hussein of the Hijaz, that if he was communicating with the British commissioner controlling Egypt, because Egypt was under the control of the British Empire at this time. And so there was communication going on between the British commissioner and Hussein of the Hijaz, where Medina and Mecca are located, saying, in which the British promised that they would agree to creating an Arab nation state for the Arabs if the Arabs rose up to fight the Ottoman Turks. And this is a copy. This is great. Here it is. McMahon was the name of the British commissioner. So it's the McMahon-Hussein correspondence. We have the letters. And they said, yes, we promise you, Hussein, just rise up and kill Turks. Kill Turks. Yes. We agree. Yes, just kill the Turks. And so they rose up, sent Lawrence of Arabia from the British Foreign Office to help organize the Arabs. And they promised the Israelis also, you can see this is also part of the area that was supposed to be part of the Arab nation state. They promised the Jews in Israel and in Great Britain under Chaim Weizmann that if they mobilized the Jews of the world to fight on the side of the British, that in return, Britain would support a homeland for the Jews here. And the French, they also wanted this area, and they wanted a homeland for the Catholics. Here we are at the Catholic University of Korea. Catholics, the Maronites, the Lebanese Catholics, a homeland for them. And the British said, yes, to all of you. Just kill Turks and Germans. Yes. And then the war's over. And they made all of these conflicting promises. London made all these conflicting promises to the Jews, the French, the Arabs. And so who's going to be screwed over? Somebody's promises are going to be rejected or forgotten. And so since the Arabs were the weakest, this was just forgotten. So this is about the European Union, this class, but of course, the Europeans did all of this in their neighborhood, next door to Greece. Israel is very much wants to be pro-European, the McMahon-Hussein correspondence here. This is great, this Wikipedia entry. It's all here. So there you see the zones of French and British influence. that were agreed. There was promises also to give this area to the Armenians. There's been a lot of discussion about the Armenians, and of course it was crushed by Ataturk. So Armenians and Greeks don't like Ataturk, don't like Mustafa Kemal Ataturk. Okay, so that's the context for approaching these detailed notes regarding subnational authorities in the European Union. And if I can find the notes for chapter 17, we can start. Oh, there it is. Okay. Okay. And so the chapter attempts to cover subnational authorities in one chapter, trying to cover all 27 member states, where you have minorities, for example, in France. Did you know that there are minorities in France? I mean, I'm not talking about recent immigrants like Bretons, Breton people. But I'm not going to spend time. Great Britain, you know what Great Britain is, right? If there's a Great Britain, then there should be a Little Britain. What is Little Britain? Breton region of France. Those people have their own language. It's a Celtic language. You don't hear about Breton region of France wanting independence from France. Not all minorities are unhappy about being in their states, but some are. But it's easier to devolve authority to regions where people are happy with being like Spanish Basques fought against the central government in Madrid. Do you know that there's a French Basque minority in France as well? There's no news reports about French Basques in the Basque regions of France organizing and fighting to kill French soldiers and French police. So devolving authority in France is a little bit easier than it is like in Spain, and certainly a lot easier than it would be in Turkey. Even though Ataturk desperately wants, the descendants of Ataturk desperately want to join or wanted to join the European Union. But so subnational authorities are part of the European Union. Again, we're trying to deal with the problem of nationalism. That is not stated in the chapter, but it's a subtext throughout the whole chapter, right? That we have this problem of nationalism in Europe that's been a cause of world wars that have killed millions of people. How do we make people stop focusing so much on their Germanness, their Britishness, their Italianness, their Frenchness? Well, give them reasons, give them incentives, give them policies that require more local and regional focus, like agriculture policy and cohesion policy. But that means we need to develop these regional authorities if they do not already exist in these countries. So, polity effect. European integration changes the relationship between the regional and central authorities, but not by a great deal, at least in the major member states. The national central authorities are no longer the only superior authorities that the subnational authorities must take into account. So provinces and regional governments must also take into account Brussels, the European Union. Policy effect. European integration legally affects the policy competencies of subnational authorities. It does so most notably through the European Union's regional policies, like the cohesion policies. Those are explicitly regional. And that's the justification for the European Union encouraging creation of regional authorities, because they need to work with somebody to develop that poor area of that country that is getting European Union cohesion funding and agricultural support. The politics effect. It motivates the subnational authorities to seek direct and indirect influence within EU decision-making. The EU has differential impact with more powerful subnational authorities experiencing the strongest EU impact. So that means typically they're talking about the Länder, the German provincial governments, Bavaria, Rhineland-Palatinate, Thuringia, the 16, I think it's 16 provincial governments. You just get a sense, I get a sense when I'm reading these chapters that, you know, that the European Union in a lot of ways is copying Germany. You know, you have a German federal system where you have two houses of the German legislature, the Bundesrat and the Bundestag, the Federal Council and the Federal Parliament. And the European Union has the Council of the European Union and the European Parliament. They also have the most political resources to respond actively. So these powerful subnational authorities demonstrate varying degrees of involvement in EU policymaking. They have adapted to European integration because, you know, everybody likes money. And if the European Union says, if you change your policies or you adopt a common form of statistical gathering of evidence for statistics, because we need the information in order to give you money to adapt and reform your agricultural policy. People are motivated to say, yeah, we'll Europeanize our standardize our gathering of information. Overall, in terms of politics effects, and particularly in terms of polity effects, the changes have been rather modest and especially differential because of the mediating effects of unique domestic institutions. So that repeats what I said earlier, that there has been an impact of Europeanization, but it has not radically transformed traditional relationships between the central government and the rest of the country. If there was a weak tradition of regional authority in a country, it stays weak. Poland is not becoming like Germany. Bulgaria is not becoming like Germany with strong, powerful provincial governments. No, they are changing, they are evolving, but they're not becoming the central focus of Polish identity or becoming powerful disruptors of Polishness. Because again, nationalism is a big issue. People were wondering over the years, would we see European nation states in the European Union become less and less important, and people become more regional at the same time as they become more European, and being national becomes less and less and less salient and intense as people focus upon their careers, their local government, to address their quality of life issues, and European at the very top. We're focusing on the local, but that's what we Europeans do. No, that's not happening. The nation state is not going away after 70 years of European integration. Regarding the impact of European integration on domestic intergovernmental relations within the member states, the research indicates a modest effect. If the subnational authorities like the Länder of Germany or Catalonia were already strong, then Europeanization has made them even stronger. Those are my comments here. So, they go on here. So they go on quite a bit. I don't know if I really want to focus on my comments. You know, for example, there was a test. We've heard about Scottish nationalism. You've been hearing about English nationalism supported Brexit. Scottish nationalism tends to oppose leaving the European Union and might favor joining the European Union. Northern Ireland and Irish nationalism is an important topic. What about Cornwall? You don't know about Cornwall? Cornwall is part of England. It's the southwest of England. Cornwall is across the ocean from Brittany in France. Those people also, until the 18th century in Cornwall, they had a Celtic language in the same family as Scottish and Irish Gaelic and Breton. So professors, mostly professors and teachers, in the 1970s, they started saying, looked at Welsh nationalism, Scottish assertion of independence. They said, hey, we're Cornish. And they reinvigorated the Cornish language. What I read was that the last native speaker of Cornish died in the 18th century. So these college professors and teachers, they got together and said, we're going to bring back the Cornish language. We're going to make Cornwall great again. And I read one source that said 85% of the words in the new Cornish language, in the textbook for Cornish language, come from Breton in France, Breton language in northern France, in Breton. Has Europeanization encouraged and strengthened and supported Cornish identity and subnational authority for Cornwall? No. Turns out Cornwall voted for Brexit. The region of Cornwall voted for Brexit. So it just goes to show you that Europeanization has intensified tendencies that were already present. If those tendencies did not have mass public support, Europeanization was not going to create them. Europeanization is not going to create new regional identities if they're not already there among the public. Cornwall voters voted in favor of the Leave campaign to leave the European Union, despite Cornwall receiving a substantial amount of European Union cohesion funds, according to one academic source I downloaded a few weeks ago. Okay, so I'm going to have to stop this because I have to record the Zoom session. So I'll have to stop the Zoom session. So click here. Okay.